They're preaching a false gospel. That's why James Martin is a false prophet about which our Lord warns in the
Mhm.
gospel, a wolf in sheep's clothing, and that's why we're discussing this, because it needs to be firmly denounced and opposed.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here with my good friend Matt Gaspers, who I'm going to see you at the Coalition for Canceled Priests conference, correct?
I wish I could say yes. Unfortunately, I'm not able to attend, but if
Ah,
I would, if I could, rather, I would. It looks like
okay.
it's going to be an outstanding lineup, and your talk in particular, and my boss Brian McCall's talk is going to be excellent. So,
That's right. Brian's going to be there. That was my mistake. I
yep.
knew Catholic Family News was going to be there, but I wasn't sure. But
Go to thekennedyreport.com and visit the TKR store to see our new products, Kennedy's Choice Beard Oil. You can use this on your beard to help with alleviating itchiness, dryness, and irritation of skin. And don't worry, no animals were used in testing this product except for myself. Use Kennedy's Choice Beard Balm for a softer, healthier, manageable beard that is made with natural ingredients. And trust me, I know a thing or two about beards. Visit thekennedyreport.com and check out the TKR store. The links for this are in the description.
the only talk that's going to be terrible, we have to admit, is going to be Anthony Abate's. And, Father Lovell, I'm not telling
Forget
you
about it.
I'm not telling you got to go to confession, but there's certain things that are unforgivable, Father. No, and despite his personality, Anthony's talk is going to be good. And it's got a great lineup. There's 1,000 wonderful speakers there. John Henry Weston, Jesse Romero, Liz Yore, Father Altman, Brian McCall, which I'm really excited about his.
Yes.
I think Dr. Kosniewski is going to be there. My talk will be half decent, I hope, and there's lots more. So,
Yes.
okay. So we're here, Mr. Gaspers, to talk about this silly film that did technically come out last year, but it has been circulating with
Right.
the sort of festivities of the season. And it is called
Specifically by an outfit run by Father James Martin, who tweeted out they're going to be screening it later this month, I think somewhere in New York City, something like that.
Yes, and this film is called Wonderfully Made. So I thought before we start talking about this amazing piece of art, we could watch a little bit of the trailer here. And I was saying before we aired, I'm not sure how copyright works. I'm going to play some of it. I'm not sure how it all works.
I'm sure your viewers will appreciate being spared the whole thing anyway.
That is true. And be patient with me, people. I cut my finger. Goodness gracious, I think I have to take this Band-Aid off. I cut my finger on grating some cheese. I was making cacio e pepe, which is a classic Italian pasta dish. And so I have this Band-Aid on, so I can't use my mouse very well. So anyway, first world problems. And okay, so here's a bit of the trailer. And I just want to make sure that we have all the audio coming through here. Yep. And okay, well, you'll get the feel from this bit.
It is a father and a mother creating a family. That's what was ordained by nature, and nature's God.
Historically, in the Catholic Church, LGBT people have been largely invisible.
Homosexual activity is sinful.
And when they are talked about, they're talked about in terms of sinfulness.
You don't want the gay liberation movement to morph into something like the Ku Klux Klan.
This is the weaponization of ministry to make us believe that we are not the people God made us to be.
If we can't imagine ourselves in the image of God, that does irreparable spiritual harm to us.
Okay, so I just want to, I'll just fast forward a little bit here just to see some of the images. There's George Floyd, the Jesus, which apparently has to do with pride. There is the rainbow flag on the cross, the sacred rainbow heart. And you'll see
Females portraying our Lord with
I'm going to find that
paint on their faces.
Yep, there's one of those at least. As I said, I'm not sure. There's a rainbow tear on the crucified Christ. There's the rainbow female Christ. Anyway, people get the gist. And of course, the Jesuits are behind it. God save the Jesuits, must be terrible for Father McTagg, who is an excellent priest and an excellent theologian and a wonderful radio host, to be associated with all this. There are some good ones left, but sadly. And then I think, there's a little bit, there you go, a little bit more and more. And it's all about, we're accepted, and of course the transvestites thing for the mass, whatever. Anyway, and there's
I
James
think the
Martin.
basic message of the trailer and presumably the whole film is that homosexuality is a good thing. It's made by God. They hijacked that scripture verse from the Psalms. We are fearfully and wonderfully made. And essentially, the Catholic Church is evil for not affirming the goodness of this unnatural, disgusting vice, basically.
Well, basically, and here's what the actual website says about it. And bios of selected interviewees. So they have Father James Martin, editor-at-large of American Magazines. And here's a quote of his. And he says, when you look at the Gospels, you see that Jesus reached out specifically to people who are on the margins. And so I think of Jesus, if Jesus were here today in the flesh on earth, he would be going first to LGBT people. And there's another lady, we'll talk about Father Martin's silly quote there in a sec. Sister Janine Gramick, who is the co-founder of New Ways Ministry, which, if I'm not mistaken, is condemned, isn't it, Matt, that ministry?
Yes, she and the priest who started it have been formally censured by the Vatican. That statement is still available on the Vatican website.
Okay, yeah. And she said, we are all children of God, and we need to understand that message so that no one will be on the outside, so there won't be any fences, that we will all be welcome. Now, here's the thing with this message. This is like when, they want to have you condemn hate. They're like, do you condemn hate to a politician? It's like, no one condones being mean to people. This is a stupid thing. It's like Jesus would reach out to LGBT people. Well, Jesus would reach out to anybody who was a sinner. He would reach out to anybody. Right. But that doesn't mean that Christ would want someone to persist in a lifestyle. I think you could probably elaborate on that as much as I could.
Well, and we certainly know, we don't even have to speculate. We know for certain how he would deal with this group of people. He would say, he would say to those who want to stone them, put them to death or whatever, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. But he also would say to the person in the situation of sin, I don't condemn you, but go and sin no more. Not I affirm you in your sin. We know that he would not say that. So yeah, they're preaching a false gospel. That's why James Martin is a false prophet about which our Lord warns in the gospel, a wolf in sheep's clothing. And that's why we're discussing this, because it needs to be firmly denounced and opposed.
It's also, it's terrible theology. Like, not just is it, I kind of joke, like, wouldn't it be nice to live in an age where we had intelligent heresies? We don't even have good heresies anymore. Arianism, you sink your teeth into it and you go, that Arianism, there was some smart people behind that, You don't take it with kid gloves, but this is like, it's not even, it's anti-natural law. So this idea that, if you watch the trailer more, it goes through this idea that this is how we're made. Listen, we're all made and we're fallen.
Right. Exactly.
So all of us have proclivities towards sinful behaviors, but those sinful behaviors don't become the thing that we identify ourselves with. And
one line I just want to mention that I just recalled from the trailer, Father Martin, I think it's toward the end, says something to the effect of, to persecute LGBTQ persons is to persecute Christ. And obviously we don't want to be unnecessarily rude or hateful or whatever, that kind of thing, but we can't, what he wants that to mean is that you can't speak against their vice or else you're hating them and persecuting them. That's what he means.
Yeah, like you might as well say, Christ says that, let the little ones come to me. My children are wonderful, but they're sinful little buggers sometimes. Like, goodness gracious, a 5 or 6 year old. This morning, what were they fighting about? They took an old beach umbrella and used it as a holster for the sword, which was an old piece of a flagpole, and broke the beach umbrella thing. It's like they've just broken our beach umbrella because they wanted to play swords. And it's like, well, they're above the age of reason. They did do something wrong. So, I had to tell them not to. Am I persecuting them? No. Am I going against Christ saying, let the little ones come to me? No. Someone could make the argument, well, that's how they were made. Well, of course that's how they were made, which is why we have grace to make us better, because we're not good we are good insofar as God creates us in his image, but because of original sin, we do have a fallen nature. So are we good how we're made? On the one hand, yes. but we're bent, we're broken, so we have to be perfect. This applies to everybody for every proclivity.
Yes, absolutely right.
Okay, but how do we get here? Well, there was a man named John Venari who you knew. I never knew him personally. You obviously knew him very well. I did work with the Fatima Center for a while, but after his passing. And you did send me this wonderful clip of his, and I'm going to play this here. And this is John Venari talking about basically how did we get to this point where the Lavender Mafia could be at such a place of prominence in the church.
It was actually one of the last conferences that he was able to do before his illness really overtook him. This was in July of 2016 at a Fatima Center conference. I was there as well as a speaker. So yeah, John's talk was excellent. It was called the Fatima and the Forces of the Antichrist, but he subtitled it The Social Kingship of LGBT.
You know, he did look gaunt in this. You could tell that he
was already getting sick. He hadn't yet been diagnosed with the cancer, but he was having the stomach issues at the time.
You know, men like him, Michael Davies, he suffered a cancer late in his life too. And there's just something, or not that late, but in his 60s, you know, there's something about these really, really incredible men who fight for Catholic tradition. It's almost like God sends them some sort of cross to bear for the church. So God be praised for giving us John Venari. But in any case, I'm going to play this clip from him here, and I'll just make sure it's on the screen. There we go.
And so-called same-sex marriage is now not only accepted, but vehemently defended by so many individuals. Now, there are many contributing factors, not the least of which is the strategies of the homosexual activists themselves. And our focus here will be on the effective tactics employed by the homosexual movement, clearly spelled out in a 1987 landmark article called The Overhauling of Straight America. It was written by homosexual activists Marshall K. Kirk and Erastus Pill. Pill was the pen name of a man named Hunter Madsen. Both of these men were highly trained. Kirk was Harvard-educated research in neuropsychology, and Madsen had a doctorate in politics from Harvard and was an expert on public persuasion tactics and social marketing. And it is said that this article, The Overhauling of Straight America, has become the Bible of the homosexual movement. What it does is it presents the strategies, first, to make homosexual more acceptable by Americans, and secondly, this is very important for us, to demonize opponents of homosexuals. The entire campaign, of course, is not based on intellectual arguments, but on the emotional manipulation of the public. Kirk and Madsen later expanded these principles into a 398-page book called After the Ball, How America Will Conquer Its Fear and Hatred of Gays in the 1990s. This was published in 1989. But for now, I'm just going to focus on this 1987 article. And in order to convey the true spirit of the piece, I'm going to rely as much as possible on direct quotation. So no one can say that these are my words. I'm going to say exactly what they said. Now.
Okay, so there is John Venari breaking down that there has been a concerted movement to sort of normalize, behavior that's against the natural law and teachings of the church. Could you elaborate on us? This is just a short clip, but Sure. Could you elaborate sort of what he got to in that talk?
Absolutely. If folks are interested in watching the full talk, it is available on the Fatima Center's YouTube channel. If you search for Fatima and the Forces of Antichrist, it'll come up. But basically what John goes through is, as he said, this 1987 article, which is called The Overhauling of Straight America, which is available online. If you search for that, Google that, you'll find it. So the article begins by saying the first order of business is desensitization of the American public concerning gays and gay rights. To desensitize the public is to help it view homosexuality with indifference instead of with keen emotion. The article goes on, ideally, we would have straights register differences in sexual preference the way they register different tastes for ice cream or sports games. She likes strawberry and I like vanilla. He follows baseball and I follow football. No big deal. And it goes on, at least in the beginning, we are seeking public desensitization and nothing more. We do not need and cannot expect a full appreciation or understanding of homosexuality from the average American. But I think we have gotten to that point now after the last 30 to 40 years of this campaign. And this article, essentially, the authors lay out a 6-point plan. I'll just read the headings. We don't have time to go into all the details, but as I said, if you search for the article, The Overhauling of Straight America, you'll find it online. So point number 1, they say talk about gays and gayness as loudly and as often as possible. Number 2, portray gays as victims, not as aggressive challengers. And I mean, they're still portrayed as a victim class, but I think they are getting less embarrassed about portraying their more aggressive side, as we've seen, with this recent incident with the LA Dodgers, the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, all of that garbage. Number 3, give protectors a just cause. So in other words, the straight, as they would say, people, the vast majority of humanity, you need to make them think that they're protecting this persecuted minority. Number 4, make gays look good. Number 5, make the victimizers look bad. That's what John was talking about. Demonize the opposition, which is also straight out of the Communist Manifesto, Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. And then number 6, finally, solicit funds. The buck stops here. And they have been very effective over the last few decades at fundraising, like the Human Rights Campaign, for example, because they don't have families to take care of. I mean, they have lots of disposable income. So that's kind of John's talk in a nutshell.
Okay, this is really fascinating. I wrote those down because I've never actually seen them put sequentially like that. So let's actually think about this for a second. And I was thinking we can actually reverse engineer this, because I almost see something like, I don't know if you saw this, but the Catholic bishops, this is good. I mean, when the Catholic bishops of the United States do something good, God be praised. I'm just going to turn that off. We would like them to do that more often. Right. But they actually did do something good, and they came out with a statement against the LA Dodgers event. Did you see this yet?
I don't know if I have or not. The only statement I've seen so far, it was from the kind of like a leaked memo from the Archdiocese of Los Angeles saying, we're not supporting the public reparation. We want to keep a lower profile and dialogue.
Yes, I saw that.
Blah, blah, blah.
This is, I'll actually show you here, and this just came out. I'll put it on the screen because this is really great. And again, when the bishops do something good, we want to praise them for this. And here, so this is, I'll make this bigger. This was like just 5 minutes before you came on. And so our friend, A Catholic Life, he showed from Catholic Vote, the USCCB promotes active reparations for Dodgers actions, which is great.
Okay.
And this is a quote from it. And they wrote, this year on June 16th, the day of the Solemnity of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, a professional baseball team has shockingly chosen to honor a group whose lewdness and vulgarity in mocking our Lord, his mother, and consecrated women cannot be overstated. This is not just offensive and painful to Christians everywhere. It is blasphemy. So these are, I mean, considering the lukewarmness of our bishops.
Strong language for USCCB. Yeah.
Yes, they use the B word, and
it's almost as bad. I mean, that's almost going as far as them using the H word. I don't think I've ever heard them use that. So
hell or heresy or both.
Well, yeah, both, I guess.
And they actually added the bishop thanked in the statements. You can link to the statement if you go to Catholic Vote. The actual link to their USCCB things in there. The bishops also thanked Catholics for standing up for their faith and speaking out against the Dodgers, which I think is at least a little bit of a hat tip to the event with Bishop Strickland and the other, Catholic influencers, let's say apologists and things like that, which is good because the LA Diocese said they don't support it. Well, here they are, who's speaking out, who's standing up to it? Well, obviously this group is, which is really good. And they said, we call on Catholics to pray the Litany of the Sacred Heart on June 16th. Wonderful. I mean, that's the Catholic thing to do. Offering this prayer as an act of reparation for the blasphemies against our Lord, which we see in our culture today. Honestly, congratulations, bishops. Slow clap. This is a wonderful thing. And But anyway, so we saw this, and I was thinking that we're starting to see, even though things are bad, on the one hand, I think we're almost starting to see this plan that this, I wrote down these 6 points. We're almost starting to see a fulcrum switch, because also, I don't know if you saw this, but Charlie Kirk put it out on blast on Twitter that Starbucks is actually reversing their pride decoration policy. Starbucks, and I used to work at Starbucks. It's funny. I used to work at Starbucks. I'm 35, so I was grade 11, 12, and a couple years in university, whatever it was. And so I worked there from, I think it was like 2004 to, it was 2004, 2005, 2004 to, 2009 or something like that, somewhere around there. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, when I started there, it was nothing like the Starbucks it became. It was just kind of like a cafe thing. It wasn't really woke. It was really nothing. It was just coffee. It was whatever. And then it became this stereotypical thing. And Starbucks went real woke. And now they're saying they're going to take down their decorations in the middle of Pride Month. That is bananas. And the reason is, I think this is happening. Point number 6 on this list, solicit the funds. It's all about the money, ultimately, or at least hugely about the money. And we saw what's happened with Target, Bud Light, and so forth. I mean, we're talking about companies losing a lot of money. And Starbucks is probably reading the tea leaves and saying, we don't need this. What do you think?
I think another point to consider is that I think they've overplayed their hand in the last maybe 10 years or so. People are just getting fed up with it being shoved down their throats and in their faces all the time. They've taken it too far. I think back in the 90s, the early 2000s, when, I think John even mentions this in his talk, like the show Will and Grace, kind of a soft push of homosexuality like that was a lot more palatable. Now that they're showing their true and full colors, people are finally, God willing, starting to wake up and say, no, we're not going to go along with this. And we've had enough. So hopefully we've gotten to that point.
Maybe we could use it. There you saw, I just showed on the screen there, the tweet from Charlie Kirk. Maybe we could use an analogy. It's kind of like with the COVID stuff. COVID was like, what was I used to think CrossFit was kind of like a cult. Sorry to the CrossFitters out there. And many of them who are in it, who are reasonable people, would probably tell you that that's a good assessment in some ways.
That's like it's an exercise plan or something.
It is.
Diet.
It's like joining a way of life. It's got a little bit of the club thing into it. But in any case, the guy who started it, he ended up getting canceled. Greg Glassman, I think his name was. Mm-hmm. And he started it in like 2000 or something. He owned it for like 20 years. In 2020 or 2021, he got canceled because he was on a staff meeting. And apparently he was pretty based. I didn't know that about him. And he was saying how sick he was of Floyd 19. And but that's just it. That was it. So we saw with the COVID thing, which we can now talk about on YouTube because it's no longer dangerous, apparently. Right. But
because Fauci said so and Biden said so.
Yeah. Anyway, but it's almost like that 2.5 years of craziness was like the last 50 years of the Cultural Revolution, not just sexual, but just in a nutshell. It was like it was everything. It was like, basically people lulled to sleep, changing their lives, changing their beliefs again, waking up and saying enough is enough. Like it was everything happened so quickly. And I think with the COVID thing, one of the things that got a lot of people to stand up, of course, it was a trucker convoy, but the reason why the trucker convoy happened was because they just pushed too far. They said, those truckers who've been going across the border for 2 years can't do that in 2 weeks. For no reason. Like it was, they can't keep doing what they're doing today, and people just lost it.
I think they got the powers that be got drunk on their power and decided to take it too far. And people finally said, no, enough is enough. We're not going along with this.
Yes. And this brings me, and I think, because you can't talk about this too explicitly on YouTube. They've gone from COVID to something else. You can't do the transgender surgery thing too harshly. So we'll mince our words a little bit just for the sake of not getting taken down here. But this idea that you could perform these surgeries and do it especially on children, this has woken a lot of people up. A lot of people are willing to have the sort of live and let live. But when they start seeing funny books coming home from school that their kids are learning and talking about this or that and going, okay, that's a little crazy. That was kind of like the booster. It was kind of like the vaccine passport. It's like, I was okay with the masks. I was okay with being safe, but this is crazy. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. And unfortunately, I think it's very deeply embedded in the American psyche in particular, but also in, the post-Enlightenment Western world in general, that what consenting adults do in private is none of my concern, So when it's just involving, adult homosexuals doing whatever they enjoy doing privately, I don't really care. That's none of my business. But when they start going after your own children, then people start to care. But what they have to understand, it's all on the same spectrum. This transgenderism is part of it. It flows out of the sodomy movement. People have to understand that.
By the time I tweeted this other day, if you're just standing up to your school board now, then you're 20 years too late.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, like there was the school board I used to work for, which is Catholic, but it's really just communist with some crosses on the doors. Most of them are resurrexifixes, which just shows you how devout that, anyway. But there was a meeting at the school board, like kind of, like those meetings you've been seeing for the CRT stuff, like the parents show up and they start, speaking and protesting and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of going on here with the rainbow flag thing in the school boards and the Catholic school boards. A couple of school boards backed down, thankfully. The York Catholic School Board, which is a Toronto area, it was pretty good to see. But anyway, but my old one did not. They're going to fly the flag and all this kind of stuff. But, parents were speaking at this meeting, and that's great. And these are faithful Catholic parents. And, I was trying to say to them, like, they've already taught your kids this stuff for 20 years. This is the flag. They're flying. They're advertising. This is like, well, they're going to fly a flag that says we support arsenic. And it's like, but they've been feeding little bits of arsenic to your children since they were in kindergarten. They just graduated high school. You had to be there 18 years ago.
And what people also need to understand is that the rainbow flag, this entire movement, like they want to resurrect the ancient Greek model of
pederasty. Yeah,
exactly. And they're open about it. That's the thing. Like if people would take the time to read, as John did, I think he may have brought this up in his talk. I don't recall, but the same homosexual men who authored the article that he quotes from, as he said, they turned their article into a book-length treatment of the subject, and they advocate for pederasty in that book.
Yes, they do.
And for them, post-pubescent is fair game. That's, no big deal to them. And that's always been part of this. That's what people have to understand. It's not something new that just cropped up. So there's an account, for example, on Twitter that says gays against groomers. I mean, God bless them for trying to oppose it, but you're fighting.
It's just you're missing the mark there. Yeah.
Right.
Well, okay, let's move to the next thing, because the next one after funds, which definitely the movement against this Rainbow Coalition thing is going after the funds, and that's first and foremost. Then the demonization. So it was like I was telling this to some friends. Last year, Elon Musk, he tweeted out that picture, and it was, brace yourself for June or something like that. And it showed someone like shielding themselves from all of the companies with all the rainbow flags. Mm-hmm. And he's been an unlikely ally in this anti-woke thing, which has been fascinating.
It's very fascinating. Yes,
it is. And but in that last year, again, it was like Rainbow threw up on everything. It was everywhere. It was absolutely everywhere. And I'm seeing a lot less of it this year. But my point is if you spoke out against that 2, 3, 4 years ago, you were demonized. But now you are seeing prominent pop culture individuals speak. You're seeing people in their personal lives. You're seeing businesses stand up to this thing. The odd one gets knocked down. Sure. Like the Toronto Blue Jays knocked down that pitcher. Toronto's a very woke city, and but then many baseball players did and did not get knocked down. And you couldn't do that a couple years ago. Even just 2 years ago, you wouldn't be caught dead being accepted in the public light, doing that. But now people almost have the courage. They're almost sick of being demonized, and they're almost willing to go on the offensive and demonize. And we're not advocating as Catholics for calumny, detraction, and so forth. But this understanding of demonization, meaning like with the demonization from the leftist is lie, cheat, steal, call the other guy names that he's not. Whereas if we reverse that,
assassination, basically,
it's character assassination. Whereas in our perspective, we're just saying, just literally tell the truth about what you believe, which in turn makes the enemy look bad. We're seeing more of that, and I think it's kind of encouraging.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can say for myself, I remember a couple years ago, I got censored on Twitter. This is before Elon Musk was in charge of it, for having the audacity to simply state the fact that Rachel Levine, an official in Biden's Health and Human Services department, is a biological male. That's simply the fact of the matter. Now, he was born Richard Levine. He graduated medical school, Richard Levine. After having been married and fathering children, he decided to become Rachel.
Yeah.
And I got censored for that. But that kind of stuff, since Elon Musk took over, I think that's kind of a thing of the past, as far as I know.
Yeah.
Maybe not completely, but it's certainly much better than it was before he took the reins.
It's much better. And, I can just tell you, I mean, just going out and about, I've seen way less of this stuff. It's mostly individual shops choosing to do it now, whereas a couple of years ago, it was like every, downtown business council said we're going to put flags on every flagpole or something like that. But I'm actually seeing a lot less of it. Okay. And here's the next one in that list. Basically make the pro-LGBT folks look good. Well, now, again, the opposite's kind of happening. We're seeing the parents who are standing up to this in their school boards. We're seeing, well, I know, listen, Andrew Tate is a very controversial figure. I'm not advocating for everything he does, but I look at this guy. If people don't know who he is, he's this former kickboxer. He made his money in a very shady way in the beginning. But he's become this sort of young man influencer, and he's massive. I mean, objectively speaking, he was the most Googled man in the world for a while. I mean, he's got millions and millions and millions and millions of views. So yesterday there was a video interview, and I don't consume much of Andrew Tate's stuff, but I look at him sort of like a Trump or an Elon Musk or something, where I can disagree with 50% of the things that he says, and vehemently so, but people are listening to this guy. He seems to be the enemy of my enemy. Does that make him my friend? I'm going to see what he has to say. I'm just, just objectively. So I listened to his interview with the PBD podcast, Patrick Bet David, which is a decent show. It's kind of like Joe Rogan without all the filth and stuff, but interesting guests. Same kind of thing. You can listen to interesting people from weird walks of life. And they talked for like 5.5 hours. And this is a guy who is adored by millions and millions of people all over the world. He has international reach. I mean, huge. And he's vehemently against this stuff. And the younger generation is vehemently against, a lot of the men especially are wildly against the rainbow movement. I mean, it's sinful in some ways the way it's talked about. I mean, people start almost becoming like identity politics in the opposite direction, which is not good. But nonetheless, I've seen now it's like this guy, this Andrew Tate fella, he's Tucker Carlson level big, maybe even bigger internationally. And he can get hundreds of millions of views on Reels and whatever, basically saying things that sound like Catholic teaching against homosexuality, but with a lot of gusto and swearing in them. And it's almost like it used to be make the will and grace people look good. But now it's almost like you're looking cool or almost like a culture hero if you're the opposite. Have you seen something like that?
Yeah, I think it's becoming more acceptable to finally I think the movement has really overplayed their hand with pushing the transgender stuff. I think also Matt Walsh did an excellent job with his documentary film on the subject to really open people's eyes, and congrats to the I forget it. So he was a man. He is a biological male, but transitioned into he was biologically. She was biologically female. I get confused. She was.
The math is difficult.
transitioned, as trying to become a man, and she admits in the film, "I will never be a man." I forget the person's name, but
Right.
waking people up to the fact that they are going after your kids. This is all about money again. This is a huge price tag with every surgery, it's basically making people lifetime customers of big pharma with lots of complications, et cetera, et cetera. So congrats to Matt Walsh on the film. I'm glad that he was able to screen it. What was that, a couple of weekends ago on Twitter?
On
He
Twitter.
opened it up to the public, which obviously would have never happened prior to Elon Musk. So.
And how many views? Do you know how many views it got on Twitter?
I don't remember the exact count. I know it was in the millions. It was
It was almost 200 million.
Wow.
That's insane. And
Yes, it is.
Now I know how views work, as you guys have a YouTube channel as well. Obviously that doesn't mean unique viewers, and it doesn't mean they watched it the whole way through it. Now I probably clicked it 3 times to just watch a part of it, so I count as 3 views. But you think people sitting with each other watching it on the laptop, on the phone, with friends, whatever. We're talking hundreds of millions of people at least looked at this thing for a little bit. That's an Overton window shift that I don't think we can understand the significance of culturally. It's huge.
Definitely is. It's probably one of the most important documentaries of the decade, I would argue. Like, before the decade is out, I highly doubt there'll be many more as important as that one. Yeah,
you're right. I agree with you on that. So the next point was give the protectors of the class a cause. Again, I see almost the opposite now. Now the social justice warrior is almost starting to look like a meme. Well, not almost, it is. People are almost like, even regular people are like, oh my goodness, this woman in HR or this guy in HR, telling me about this or that. And they're just kind of rolling their eyes. The cause is lost on them. Whereas on the other hand, the more you persecute these Matt Walsh types, these Andrew Tate types, these countercultural people, again, you don't have to agree with all their message. The more you persecute these people, the more famous they get, and the more of an organic, almost cultus around them develops, where they're seen as like a righteous warrior for the right cause. That to me is fascinating as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree. Actually, I remember tweeting, I think it was either earlier this year or maybe sometime last year, that it was in response to a clip from the Matt Walsh show. I don't really watch the podcast. I follow him on Twitter, so occasionally he comes up in my my timeline. But he had this excellent clip about, I'm not ever going to stop talking about this, no matter what you do, no matter how much you threaten me and my family. We're going to be safe. We're not going to back down. You're not going to scare us. And I quote tweeted it something like, I wish Matt Walsh would be invited to speak at the next USCCB meeting, because that's what these bishops need to hear. They need to grow a spine and start speaking like Matt Walsh. That's what we need.
It's and the funny thing is, that sort of language is the way that the blue-haired crowd has always talked, and it's been so annoying. I will not be silenced. It's like you're literally speaking at a commencement at Harvard. Literally nobody's trying to silence you. Right. It's like, I will not be persecuted. No kidding. You're getting a Medal of Honor. Like, this is literally happening to you right now. And it's always just been so nauseating, because they're just making up this paradigm that doesn't exist. Whereas Matt Walsh, it's organic. It's like people are giving death threats and trying to bomb his house and whatever, and he's still pushing through. It speaks to people.
Hacking his phone, hacking his personal information, all kinds of stuff. And I'm convinced if the bishops would address us as true shepherds and as generals of the church militant, the people would respond appropriately. The men in particular would rally to their leaders. They're ready. They just need them to lead.
Honestly, I think it was an old TNT episode. What was that kid's name from Covington, Kentucky?
Oh, yeah. I know. It's right on the tip of my head here. I just can't think of it.
He ended up getting a big settlement from CNN or whatever it was. They went after him, calling him racist or whatever for nothing. He was literally
Sandman. That's it. Nick Sandman.
Nick Sandman. And so that's near Cincinnati, not too far in Kentucky there. And I remember on the TNT episode, I think, the Tim and Taylor, they were basically saying, bishops, like, we're ready to go to bat for the Nick Salmons of the world. You called a crusade and we'll be there tomorrow. That was basically the message. And that's where Catholic men are. I mean, here we are. You and I both have children. We have relatively cancel-proof jobs. I mean, we get to work in this Catholic journalism media sphere, so sure. But there is still the risk of, individuals in the community or whatever, being upset with us. I mean, those things can happen. But we do this because we believe in the truth. We believe that we want all souls to know Christ, especially the ones who are vilifying him, because Christ tells us to love our enemies.
Clearly, we're not doing it to get rich.
No, we are not doing this to get rich. Yeah, if I wanted to be rich, I'd be a neocon.
Yeah.
I'd go write for the National Review or something. But, but here we are. But the point is we don't even have the bishop's backing in most cases. Our bishop was not at the school board of the diocese he oversees, which is technically under his direction. He wasn't there. There was a couple priests and parents. He wasn't there, just wasn't there. And they're just not there. But if the bishops, here's a message to you. Listen, even if the government comes and blows up your residence, guess what? You're not going to be homeless. We'll take you in. Like, if a bishop had the courage to go be martyred, goodness gracious, we'd support white martyrdom even, right? Just get out there and we would support. Look what's happened to the canceled priests. A priest gets canceled for preaching, some of them, Father Altman gets all the publicity, but there is like one of the fellows who's part of the, one of the priests who's part of the Coalition for Canceled Priests. He wasn't even traditional. He was just praying outside abortion clinics, and his bishop, whatever, knocked him down a peg. I mean, these men are taken care of. Any priest or bishop who wants to speak out about this, doesn't matter what happens to you, we will support you. And, the influence of that would change the culture dramatically.
Absolutely, it would. It would be one step in, restoring some kind of semblance of Christendom, where the spiritual and temporal authorities collaborate as they should and work together. Yeah.
So the next point is that you mentioned was portraying them as victims. Well, again, the opposite's happening now. I mean, especially with Matt Walsh's documentary, you see some of these gender theory people talking about this, and it's like, you are not a victim. You're like a weird postmodernist guru, like hypnotist. Like there's just, like you are intentionally.
If not an outright predator.
Yeah, or a Satanist or whatever. I mean, there's just so much going on there. Whereas now, again, Matt Walsh is a legitimate victim, again, to bring it back to this Andrew Tate fella, again, people can take or leave some of the stuff he says, but the persona that people are after is the fact that they put him in jail, and because of allegedly because of what he says, and they create a martyr, and the victim thing works both ways, and it's very powerful. Okay, last one is the talk loud. Yeah. We're all tired. We're all very tired of all the loud talking, but now we're starting to finally see the loud talking in the opposite direction. We are going to see this Rosary March, which is going to be real big in LA. Bishop Strickland will be there. We are now seeing Catholics speaking out about this. We're now seeing massive social media personalities speaking out about this and becoming more and more famous and wealthy as they do so. So I see this trend going in the other direction as well. What about you?
Yeah, just one thing that comes to mind that we should promote, our friend at the Lepanto Institute, Michael Hitchborn, has just released a huge, massive, monumental report on, I think it's called Common Spirit Health. It's the largest Catholic health organization or like provider hospital network. I forget the correct lingo for it, but I think in the United States, in the entire United States, the biggest Catholic healthcare provider in the United States. And he's exposing their horrific transgender policies and support for that whole movement, including the mutilation and the surgeries and all that kind of stuff. He just published it. Yeah, there it is. There, somewhere on his homepage. It's called. Let me see if I can.
I had it.
Remember the name of the report here. So the name
Here
of
it
the
is.
report is Common Spirit Health and the Sex Change Industry.
That's right.
An investigative report into the largest Catholic health system, that's the word, system, in the United States and its performance and funding of transgender surgeries and therapies, abortions, and its prescribing and provision of contraception. So well
Yeah.
done, Mr. Hitchborn. Thank you for doing all that work.
And it was picked up by Epic Times.
I was also picked up by the Daily Wire, so we have hope that Matt Walsh himself might read it or be briefed on it. That would be amazing if he talked about it.
Well, we know thousands of people more will read the report because of the publicity, nonetheless. So so this is a really good thing, and this is what I'm saying. Again, it's like the COVID thing. There were people who were so down with all of it, and they didn't ask any questions. But the minute that this is the funny thing about people with what they're willing to accept. It's like the analogy of a dam with a crack in it. The dam is up, and as long as there's no cracks at all, they don't even think about the water. They're like, whatever, it's there, it's fine. But as soon as there's one crack, then they go, why is there a crack there? We have to fix the crack. Oh no, look at all that water. And we're gonna be flooded if we don't do something. It was the same thing with the COVID thing. It was, I don't care, get your vaccine, whatever. And it's like, wait, booster? Wait, my brother-in-law can't go into a restaurant and he was able to go in, like, this is stupid. And then it was like, hey, maybe those people talking about injuries weren't insane. Maybe they weren't wrong about masks. And it was just, as soon as you could have one crack, it's like the rest of the dam cracked. And I really think that's what we're seeing. I'm not trying to say there's going to be no fight left. I'm not saying this is the reign of the Immaculate Heart or, the great Catholic monarch is coming tomorrow or something. There's many things that we still have to fight for in the culture. But if I'm being positive, because it is very easy to be negative, if I'm being positive, to be honest, this year's Pride season seems to be going a lot more in the favor of truth than any of before that.
I would agree with that. I think we've got a lot of prominent voices speaking out, not being silenced. Thankfully, we have people like Elon Musk, who obviously he's got plenty of his own problems with the whole transhumanism kind of stuff that he's into. The Neuralink is all that stuff sounds pretty disturbing from what I've learned about it. But for whatever reason, he's a big advocate of free speech, and his understanding of it is let people say, obviously the traditional Catholic understanding of that is a lot different, that you have the freedom to speak the truth.
Yes.
But we're not going to turn him down if he's going to let us, actually speak the truth and not silence us, whereas we were being silenced before. So.
Yeah, the way I always say it, if you ever read the book Liberalism is a Sin, it was a wonderful book. I think I've read it twice. And he talks about the philosophical, let's say the philosophical heresy of liberalism, the author. But he does make the point in there that it's such a mixed bag in liberalism that there are folks who are he talks about alliances for reasons of professional or friendship purposes, which hopefully would lead to conversion either of the person or of the culture. Right. So, for example, if there's a book publisher, which is like Jordan Peterson's a perfect example. He's a classic liberal, which today makes him far right. But he's really he said this before, and he's Canadian, so I understand where he's coming from in the political sphere here. He's a classic British liberal. That's what he is, which means he's ultimately got philosophical errors. However, he basically applies something like the scientific method to public discourse. So let's just test all the ideas and see which one is the truest. And because of that, he is an ally in many ways. And if there are things that we can promote that he's doing, or we can get on his podcast or something like that, then it performs a great service to people. And that's just where we are.
Right. Yeah, we have to work with the circumstances that we're in and do the best we can.
Yeah. And Catholics need to be careful, though, too, because sometimes, you and I being traditional Catholics, I love me my trads, but there can be this mentality that, well, we know something like integralism or distributism or whatever. We know, corporatism, whatever ism that fits with the encyclicals. This must be our political philosophy. Everything else is compromise. And it's like, don't let the good be the enemy of perfect, or perfect be the enemy of the good. No one's saying go be a transhumanist like Elon Musk, but they are saying if he lets you do you can do any show on Twitter right now. You know, this episode, I mean, I don't think it'll get striked by YouTube. I've never had a strike, I think. But if it did, I could put it on Twitter, which is much bigger than Rumble, you know. So, I mean, that's a good thing. Okay, speaking of not good things, though, because we can't be too positive. People are going to think, Kennedy, what are you, all white-pilled? And you're just all, what do you think? This is a new springtime? How dare you? How about this? This thing. We can watch this for a second.
This is not a parody, by the way. This is the official Vatican News YouTube channel.
Just before we play it. Like, what? It's so crazy. Just the modesty aspect. Like the dance part being weird. But I mean, like you're not supposed to.
That's not a fake background. That is, this man is in front of St. Peter's Basilica, the basilica over which it was built over the bones of the Prince of the Apostles himself. That is not a fake background. That is the real deal.
Like if people can see my mouse here a little bit, like these doors behind him, I haven't been to the Vatican in like 20 years or something, or however long it's been, and maybe not 20 years, but about that. But you can't go in those doors without a shirt on. You can't go in those doors with a tank top on, let alone without a shirt on. Anyway, it's just crazy. So anyway, let's just see what this performance that was seen by dozens of adoring fans.
Yeah,
let's see how good it was.
Muted. So I was just saying the aerial view of the audience is the best because it shows that probably 80 to 85%, if not more, of the seats are empty. It was a total flop. Thankfully so.
Yeah, it was. Anyway, so there's that guy doing something strange. And
right. So this is apparently an Italian, well-known Italian dancer named Roberto Bolle, Bolle, who is an active, open homosexual. He was invited to perform at this event called the World Meeting on Human Fraternity, which was held on June 10th, so over this past weekend. And my question to Pope Francis and the Vatican, whoever organized this ridiculous event, which it was basically like a variety show that went on for almost 5 hours. Terrible.
It was a woman singing the song from Wizard of Oz or whatever.
Yep. And all kinds of other stuff. They sang "We Are the World, We Are the Children," like from the 1985 Live Aid show with Michael Jackson and Stevie Wonder and stuff. But my question to the people who organized this is, how is this not a Vatican-sponsored promotion of sodomy and gender ideology? There's no way that the organizers could have been ignorant of who this man is and what he stands for.
I mean, of course, but also, how is it not a Vatican-sponsored event of just really cringe, bad art?
Well, yeah, exactly.
You know, I mean, it's just like I think about. Let's just brainstorm here for a second, Matt. Like, we work for the Vatican. Okay, we're not cardinals; we're lay people, and we're in a meeting, and we're like, okay, how are we going to promote this Freemason religion? Come on, guys, come on, let's make everybody Freemasons. I know. We'll have an old lady sing "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." We'll have a choir or a recording, whatever it was, sing the song that they sang about AIDS in 1985, with people holding hands and walking around an empty square. And then we'll hire a guy to do interpretive dance with no shirt on. And for sure, people they'll flood to the church after this.
Whose benefit was that for, by the way? I cringe to think about that.
Well, this is what I'm saying is like, it's not even a good event.
Right.
Like if you're going to do something secular, why don't you do it good? Like right. I could almost have like if you're going to do something so ridiculous, bring in a good DJ or something. Like, what do you, if you want to, this just shows you, this is the same thing. People say the Vatican II, get with the times. No, the Vatican II was not about getting with the time, the new liturgy and stuff, the spirit of Vatican II, all that sort of stuff. It was about crystallizing the 60s. I think, I can't remember which book I write it in. It's a line that I use often though. But, they wanted us to sing along with Peter, Paul, and Mary, and I don't mean the biblical ones. The fact that they had people singing "We Are the Children" shows that they don't even know how old they are. That was 3 years before I was born.
Right.
That's 38 years ago. I've got, soon to be 6 children. I'm a father, I'm a cat. I don't even know what this song is. And they're playing this stuff as a way of bringing young people into the church, some of whom are young enough to be my children. And I'm not even old enough to have heard it. It's mind boggling how out of touch they are.
It really is. It really is. It really is. But I mean, it's fun to, as our friend Chris Ferrara often says, all you can do with this kind of stuff is mock it. I mean, that's all it deserves is mockery, because they're making a mockery of our Lord, of the church, of everything that our faith stands for. And the proof is in the pudding, as they say. There was hardly anybody who attended this event. It's just pathetic, and I'm glad that it wasn't well attended, because it shouldn't be well attended. It's horrible. It's more proof that young people are looking for substance, not for this ridiculous, degenerate fluff that they're trying to shove down our throats.
Well, let's just look at this. Like, there, you can see a lot of the audience there, the nobody there. There's literally, Rome is a city. When I lived in Italy, when I was a grade 7, 8, we moved to my mom's an immigrant, and we moved to her old village that she grew up in. Not close to Rome. I mean, in Italy, here in Canada, you drive 2 hours, and that we joke that's down the road. Like, I live in our best friends are half an hour there, 45 minutes there, and an hour and a half there. I live out in the country in southwestern Ontario. That's close by. But in Italy, there's an expression. In Canada, 200 years is a long time. In Italy, 200 kilometers is a long distance, but Rome is about 4 hours away, which is real far for Italy. Anyway, so I only went there a few times. It's just, you don't travel that far there. It's just, you don't need to. But the point is, at that time, Rome, I think one of my mom's friends, who was a Roman citizen and like a Roman resident. And this was the year before we moved there. The Roman soccer team, like the actual city team, had won the Serie A, the big soccer championship, for the first time in a long time. And he said, I remember him saying, Rome is a city of 3 million people, and 1 million people were at the celebration. He was like a third of the city of Rome. So I would imagine the city's bigger now. This was in 2001, 2002. So this is 20 years ago. Let's just say Rome has 4 million people. 4 million people. You are the Vatican. You literally have unlimited resources, and you can't, I don't know, I guess I'm beating a dead horse here, but just to think about how much of a fail this was. They couldn't even put like a sandwich board outside saying, come in for free performance and we'll give you tea and cookies.
Right.
And come watch some people sing some songs like that. Anyway, it's just crazy.
Yeah. If you watch the video on the Vatican News YouTube channel, you see aerial views, and I'm looking at it right now, and it just, the left, they have the square kind of divided into 2 halves. The right half is literally almost completely empty. There's some people like, little dots in the square, but that square is massive. You can fit a lot of people in there. There probably wasn't even, there may have been like 500 to 1,000 people at most. That's a generous estimate. A very generous estimate.
Yeah, there's more people at like an SSPX chapel on the weekend than there was at, put that in perspective. Okay, so before we have a few minutes left here, you were telling me, we were texting earlier, that you think there's some links to the synodal way, the synodal path, the synod on synodality, synod. What's that line of thinking you have there?
So I think the LGBT movement I think it's getting a lot of pushback in civil society, more so than it is in the church. The church, I think, is a little bit behind society at large in pushing back. That's my sense anyway. Um, so just as the LGBTQ whatever movement has overplayed their hand kind of in civil society, I think that we're going to see the same thing repeat itself within the church. And I think that bomb is about to explode, or everything's going to come to a head in that regard at this Synod on Synodality meeting in October. Because for almost 2 years now, we've been hearing about the Synod on Synodality, which is all of this consultation of the faithful, of the people of God. It's yada, 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 like all of the online surveys and parish listening sessions or whatever. But the actual a synod is a meeting of bishops, people.
Yes.
It's not a consultation of the people of God or of humanity at large. That's not a synod. A synod is a meeting of bishops under the headship of the Bishop of Rome. And that meeting is going to take place this coming October, the first of two. Francis has said there's going to be a second such meeting in October of 2024. Whether or not he will be around by then, only God knows. His health is certainly not getting better. If anything, it's getting worse more quickly.
Yeah, he's having surgeries all the time now.
Yeah, and he's had a significant portion of his colon removed for going on a couple years now. So and he's having, as a result of that, like the scar tissue is creating bowel obstructions. I mean, he doesn't have a lot longer left. Like, we're talking maybe a couple years at the most, I think. So who knows if he'll be around for that, but I think October of this year, it's this whole situation with the LGBT stuff in the church is going to blow up, and hopefully people are ready to stand up, including bishops, including cardinals, and say enough is enough. Sodomy is a sin. We're not going to take it anymore. We're not, as that old, speaking of the 80s,
song.
that song, we're not gonna take it.
Yeah, use that song at the next at least it has some sort of theological meaning to it, and
the evidence for all of this is in the official synodal documents. You had the United States. So all of these consultations ultimately worked their way up to diocesan chanceries, and then the chanceries had to send them to the USCCB or whatever bishops' conference, wherever you are in the world, and each bishops' conference had to generate a summary of what was collected. And virtually across the board, whether it was organic, whether people were actually saying this, or whether they just put it in there because they want it in there, I don't know. But pretty much across the board, but especially in the Western world, LGBTQ stuff is very prominent. I'll just give you a very small sample from, let's see, this document is the working document for the continental stage. So when they were doing all the continental meetings of various bishops' conferences, it was the template for those meetings. I wrote an article about this for Catholic Family News at the beginning of this year. It's available at catholicfamilynews.com.
What's the title of that? I'll pull it up on the screen here.
It's called Continuous Aggiornamento. Synod seeks to preserve precious legacy of Vatican II. So that was the main theme of the article, was showing the connections between all of this synodality and what was started at Vatican II. But kind of getting into the weeds of it, there's a section in my article called "Church Must Become More Welcoming." And I say in the article, recalling the document's central theme, enlarge the space of your tent, which is a verse from the book of Isaiah. The text, meaning the working document, also says the church must become, quote, a more welcoming space for all, including those whose, quote, loving relationships objectively violate divine and natural law. Here is a quote from the document. The reports, meaning these consultations and all of those from the various dioceses, clearly show that many communities have already understood synodality as an invitation to listen to those who feel exiled from the church. Among those who ask for a more meaningful dialogue and a more welcoming space, we also find those who, for various reasons, feel a tension between belonging to the church and their own loving relationships, such as, then they give a list, remarried divorcees, single parents, people living in a polygamous marriage, that's a new one, and LGBTQ people. Many summaries, the document states elsewhere, also give voice to the pain of not being able to access the sacraments experienced by remarried and divorcees and those who have entered into polygamous marriages. I think the same applies for those living unchastely with someone of the same sex as them. So they are really pushing hard. The U.S. I think synthesis is what it's called, is even more direct and explicit in regard to the LGBTQ stuff. So I think all of that is going to blow up at the October meeting. So it'll be interesting to follow that.
Yeah, even right there where it says loving relationships. Well, by the Catholic definition, love essentially means willing the good of the other.
Right.
So there is no such thing as a loving relationship where, in the technical
killing
sense,
each other's souls. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and we saw this.
Possibly even their bodies, really, frankly.
Yeah, yeah, and we saw this with the Synod on the Family. I think it was Father Rosica, who I know actually. I've met him, and he was speaking in my diocese and at my school board and stuff. I mean, it's very close connections, and yeah. And I had wrote an article about them trying to resurrect him in the Jesuits here in Canada. He's a Basilian. That doesn't mean he's a lot. I mean, it's not bazillion like the number, St. Basil, bazillion. And, but they were trying to resurrect him, and we wrote an article reminding everyone he was a plagiarist. They actually canceled his event, thankfully. But in any case, he was at the Synod on the Family, and someone asked a question about sort of LGBT relationships, and his response was something like, "Are you telling me you can't find something good, something human in those relationships?" It's one of those questions that if you're good at rhetoric, it kind of stops the person, because you're thinking to yourself, and you're not expecting that from a Catholic prelate, but it's equivocal. It's a false equivocation. It's like, someone who is divorced and remarried. Let's just take that and take it out of the LGBT realm. Someone who's just divorced and remarried. That's objectively against the church's teachings. That person also really likes to, go and do gardening with their live-in boyfriend. It's like, well, that's good, I guess, but that has nothing to do with the relationship, or, they help to, save abused puppies. Okay, don't abuse your puppies. I like dogs. I've got a nice dog outside, and he's a good friend of mine. Don't abuse him. But like, that doesn't validate the relationship, or, they have some sort of companionship. Great. I mean, people in gangs have companionship. People in the mafia have companionship. They're willing to die for each other. It doesn't validate the mafia. Okay.
Correct.
It just shows the deep theological disorder that's so deep. So what do you think, though? I mean, so you're thinking it's going to come to a head. If you had to play, please, people, don't accuse us of trying to summon the occult here. I'm using the term equivocally. If you had a crystal ball, what would you predict about the fall meeting? What do you think?
Well, if it's anything like, the indications we've been given by leaders of the Synod, like Cardinal Jean-Claude Hollerich, for example, who is the general relator for the Synod, and the general relator is essentially the liaison between the office of the Synod of Bishops in the Vatican and the bishops who come to Rome and are participating in the meeting. He's the go-between, so to speak, and he reports on behalf of the assembled bishops what they're discussing. He gives a report to the office of the Synod of Bishops, and the Synod of Bishops directs him, okay, we need to take it in this direction or whatever. He coordinates all that. And he's, there was video footage captured, I think last summer it was, of him he was doing a tour in the United States. Pretty sure that was last summer. And he was somewhere, I think he was actually in the Archdiocese of Chicago. Coincidence?
Yeah.
Blaise Supich's territory. And he was telling some guy, and it captured it on film. I know LifeSite covered it. We covered it on our show. I forget his exact wording, but essentially he was affirming, he refused to categorically condemn homosexual behavior, number one. And number two, he said, I am in complete agreement with Pope Francis, implying Pope Francis is in complete agreement with me.
With him, yeah.
Yeah. So I think, it's definitely going to come to a head at the Synod in some way, and it's going to take some real courage. Just like I know Cardinal Burke and some other prelates they wrote a book-length I forget what they called it, remaining in the truth of Christ or something like that. They tried to circulate it among the bishops who were there. Somehow, I think it was Cardinal Baldessari at the time, who was the head of the Synod of Bishops, kind of put the kibosh on that and, railroaded that effort. So they need to be organized. They need to be organizing now. How are we going to fight this? Because it's going to happen. Guaranteed, it's going to happen. They need to be organizing themselves now.
It's the same thing that happened at the Second Vatican Council when you read, and they've uncrowned him, Archbishop Lefebvre. And I think he called it the Robber Baron Council or the Robber Council or something. It's one of the chapters, and he explains the onslaught of leftist modernist propaganda, which was concerted. It was planned. It was strategic. They didn't have the internet and things like that, but it was pamphlets. I mean, and they'd had so-and-so who's a cardinal was in charge of a dicastery or whatever, and he had access to a printer. So he used those resources.
Highly coordinated. And that's what those who actually care about divine and natural law, who knows how many of those there are these days, but those that do care need to start getting organized, because they're going to push this agenda at that synod. I guarantee it. 100%.
I was talking to Father Murr the other day, and he's obviously got some great stories. His life, if everyone doesn't know, if people don't know who he is, he's got quite an interesting perspective given his proximity to the sort of inner workings of Rome from early in his priesthood and all that sort of stuff. And he said there's a huge portion of the bishops. He says he thinks it's the majority. They're just petrified. They're petrified of the sort of tyranny, the way that things are governed, the lavender mafia and so forth. And often what they do is they put these, generally speaking, conservative bishops they put these priests as bishops because they're actually less effective that way. When they're priests, they sort of go around converting souls and things. And when they put them in bishops, they force them to be an administrator with the sort of Damocles over top, which actually in a way is it's a very Machiavellian way of doing things. But I would say, no, you're not going to win the heart of the Catholic people, generally speaking, right now over liturgy or this thing or that thing. It's just not something that people understand enough about. There are more, generally speaking, there are more conservative Catholics than there are traditional Catholics in the sense of those who go to church, although the gap is narrowing. But this is an issue that is a win-win. If you're a mass-going Catholic and you believe in the real presence, you account for those like 50% of the people that are in the pews out of that 15% that go to mass, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. If you are one of those, you are not with the rainbow agenda. Doesn't matter if you're trad, doesn't matter if you're conservative Novus Ordo or whatever, or Byzantine or Anglican Ordinariate. If you're one of those, and if you're a bishop and you want to have the Catholic support on your side, you will have it if you speak out against this. The Catholics that don't go to mass, their souls matter, but for the life of the church, they literally don't matter, meaning they don't actually go, they don't actually contribute, they don't do anything. Right. The people in the pews who believe in the real presence and who go to mass, which represent about half of mass attending Catholics, they're 100% on your side. So, it's going to be interesting. This will be an interesting synod to see, because this is an issue that crosses liturgical lines. It crosses cultural lines. This is a Rubicon
because we're in
to
the
cross.
area of natural law. This isn't even Catholic teaching per se.
Yeah.
This is simply natural law.
Well, this is something, even if you might not even believe in the real presence because you're not a catechized Catholic, but you're sane. You might be an Episcopalian. This is an issue that's important even to non-Christians, frankly. If you're a devout whatever, devout Jew, devout Muslim, devout whatever. Yeah. Although I don't think you can be an Episcopalian and believe in the natural law. I think that's against their religion now.
I bet Tucker Carlson would surely agree with you. He roasted the Episcopal religion at that, Heritage Foundation lecture that he gave.
What did he keep saying? He's like, I'm Episcopalian. It's not even a real religion. I'm literally an Episcopalian. I have no right to an opinion, He was funny. Okay, Matt, this has been wonderful. Why don't you tell us what's going on at Catholic Family News?
Sure. Well, at present, we're just assembling the, July newspaper. Hard to keep up. The months seem to fly by. Right now on the screen, you can see our website displayed. We have an article on the Feast of Corpus Christi that I posted the other day for that feast, and got an exciting news statement coming out that we'll be publishing pretty soon from Archbishop Vigano. I'll keep you posted about that,
Yeah, let me
but
know.
it's going to be very good. And then as you can see, a lot of the posts on the website are our weekly news roundup, which we usually broadcast on Thursdays around 5 p.m. Eastern. That article that you see on the screen now, The Idolatry of Identity, is an excellent article by one of our contributors, John Monaco. So highly recommend that one for the month of June in particular. There you can also see my exclusive report on the responses I got from the Archdiocese of Kansas City regarding the SSPX, which I was very pleasantly surprised how they responded to those questions. So yeah, we have the monthly publication, Catholic Family News, which is basically a magazine in newspaper form. If you click on the new subscription,
make sure you go and subscribe, people.
Please do, because our numbers are actually pretty low right now. We had a lot of issues during COVID because we actually, the physical paper is printed in Canada.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of trouble getting the papers across the border during the COVID situation. So our delivery was terrible, and I apologize for that. Just we had no control.
There was nothing you could do about it.
Had no control over the post office situation. But
so this is yearly? This is a yearly subscription?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, people, 47 if you're in Canada, $47, $42 if you're in the US. Goodness gracious, don't buy 3 Starbucks drinks and get Catholic Family News. And you'll,
Please.
Actually, maybe do patronize Starbucks after they get rid of the pride decorations. But my point is $47. That's like half your cell phone bill. You can get a subscription to CFN.
Yes, and the nice thing, you get a physical paper. I, for one, like to have a physical book. For example, I have a copy of Kennedy's new book.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. I like to hold a book in my hands.
Me too.
E-reading is fine. It's nice.
It's good for research. I do it for research, but I don't want to sit down with an ebook.
There's no substitute for a physical book, in my opinion. And the same thing is true for a magazine or periodical. It's just different to have the physical thing in your hand. But if for whatever reason you're not interested in that, that's fine. We still have you covered. We have an e-edition of the full newspaper, which is typically 28. Here, I'll get
I think it said 32.
Example.
I think it said 32.
It used to be 32 years ago, but we reduced it to 28 a few years back. We need to update that apparently, but this is what it looks like to kind of give you an idea of the size and shape. So full, periodical sized pages, 28 full pages of that. We have the full newspaper in e-edition format for only $32 for the entire year, and that's regardless of where you live in the world, because obviously there's no shipping involved for the e-edition. But everyone who subscribes to the physical newspaper automatically gains access to the e-edition as well.
Okay,
so
and you can,
both options.
If you don't like computers, which are maybe you're a person who doesn't like computers and your son is helping you listen to this podcast, so you don't actually know how to do it. If you don't know how to do that, you can get your son to give you this address, and you can literally just send the form and the money to a physical address and get it that way. So there's no reason you got to be techie. You don't have to put in any credit card information. You can just get it the old-fashioned way.
That's correct. You can also call our toll-free number that's on the screen, 1-800-474-8522. And you can even send me an email. It's CFNMPG, so P as in Paul, CFNMP as in Paul G at gmail.com. Sorry.
That's all right. And you can find Matt on Twitter and so forth. He's there. And if anyone, for anyone watching this show, if you missed any of that or you don't know what to do, you can click the link in the description of this show where you can contact me. We have an email sign up. And if you ask me questions about Catholic Family News, I'll hook you up with the links and stuff and the contact for Matt and CFN. So 100 different ways to sign up. You should sign up. It's good stuff. And the nice thing about these things, like I've got a friend of mine from church, he gave me like 70 magazines, the Angelus Press magazine, but we also have one in Canada called Convictions. It was out of print for a bit and now it's back. It's just wonderful. I've got all these old magazines, just got them in this, those old like what do you used to call them? They were like basically the magazine things you put in your living room and you have them beside the couch.
Oh, a magazine rack. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like you could pick it up and bring it to another room. It was almost like a little suitcase with magazines. We have one of those, and it's nice because I can just leave those out. My kids, I mean, my 7-year-old doesn't read well enough for one of those, but it's just there. And it's like, I don't have to worry about it. They can pick it up and I don't have to put them on a computer, and they can just have information that's helpful. So I would recommend it.
And something else that we offer for folks who might be interested, I know we used to do a lot of this in the past. I'd like to get back into doing more of it. So if you are at an SSPX chapel or a priestly fraternity parish or diocesan TLM, whatever, we offer, you can purchase like a pack of 5 or 10 newspapers to leave out or to distribute amongst your parishioners, your friends at church. So if you call the office or send me an email to inquire about that, I can help you do that as well. It's a nice way of helping to be a partner of ours in spreading Catholic family news, kind of being a part of the apostolate, an ambassador for CFN, as I would say.
Well, good. And I would even say extend that, if you do a men's group or anything, like anything where you've got Catholics who get together frequently, if you got a Holy Name Society or something, sign up, call Matt, figure it out. You'll get your group rate, whatever it is, whatever you do. And that way you can have something. So, okay, good. Everyone sign up for Catholic Family News. After you've done that, click the link in the description if you want a copy of my book and our beard products. Okay. Matt, this has been a pleasure, and come back anytime. I can't believe this is the first time I've had you on my show. It's been this thing started as a little hobby, and now it's kind of growing. So now I'm kind of having to think. Usually I just kind of 5 minutes before I record, I have an idea and I just get on my camera for 20 minutes and air it sometime in the day. But now it's becoming something more regular. So we'll have you on again. I appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let us know what you think in the comments. If you have anything bad to say, you can email Matt and just leave me out of it. And this has been the Kennedy Report. Until next time, God bless.